Hi, I'm Anne-Marie Mediwake, and I'm here with Kelsey McEwen. Welcome to CTV Your Morning, the podcast.
This week, we're looking at how the new docu-series Get Hooked, it's breaking barriers in fishing and highlighting the importance of community building.
And with all eyes on the upcoming election, we'll take a look at what Indigenous communities need and want from the next federal government.
Thanks so much for joining us today. Remember, you can start your day with us live weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern, 7 to 10 a.m. Atlantic. We're on CTV, CTV News Channel, and your CTV News app.
We're starting off the podcast this week with a look at the Canadian real estate market.
Yeah, a new report is finding that half of Canadians are planning to buy a house within the next 5 years. 12% of them will be purchasing in the next 12 months.
Yeah, because spring is when we usually see the most activity from buyers and sellers. And real estate broker Erica Reddy tells us how she is seeing the market shaping up this season.
I want to get a sense of where we're at right now and where we're going. So what does the market look like right now?
So it has been a bumpy start, to say the least. January, February, March, there's just been a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknown. What's going to happen? How's everything going to unfold? Politically, to the south. There's just a lot on most of Canadians' minds. I would say spring is on the doorstep. You're definitely starting to see some early optimism and as we, head into the spring market. But I think people are still
waiting.
Yeah.
So in terms of inventory, are we seeing a lot out there right now?
So we're definitely seeing an uptick in inventory. That is for sure. Some inventory, especially last week, I would say, you saw a little bit more momentum. But prior to that, it really is a little bit, some's going, some's not. Some people are still waiting. Some people are, it's
a bit of a mixed bag.
Very much
let's
so.
talk about prices, home prices right across the country. Give us an overview.
So nationally, we're looking at, frankly, a little, every province is operating a little bit differently. Vancouver, you've actually seen a bit of a decrease in the overall detached home prices.
So this is the average price of a what? Detached?
Detached, correct, yeah. So you've seen Vancouver come down slightly year over year. Toronto, you've actually seen some stability, but interesting to note on Toronto, you've actually seen the actual number of sales come down.
Okay.
Montreal, you've seen stabilization, and Calgary, you've actually seen an uptick.
An uptick.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just staring at the prices right now. So Vancouver's sitting at 1.2, average price for detached, just over $1 million for Toronto, $618 for Montreal. That's a big difference, eh?
Big
Montreal,
difference.
And then Calgary sitting at $694. Okay, let's talk about the Bank of Canada interest rate. We've seen multiple cuts over the last little while. And the question right now is, there's a lot of uncertainty going on in the world, especially North America. So what do you expect we'll see in terms of the Bank of Canada decision on interest rate this year?
Definitely. So, we've obviously seen quite a few cuts at the end of 2024. 2025 has also started with cuts. As to what's to come, I think it's going to be really interesting to watch. And I think we're going to be heavily weighted on what's happening with the U.S. and obviously overarching market here in Canada. I know that affordability is top of mind for Canadians. People are still finding that the house prices are outweighing the income earned. So there's still a pretty good discrepancy there. So I think most Canadians would be very relieved to see future rate cuts.
Because what does that mean? That means also mortgage rates will be impacted. So what are we predicting there?
Absolutely. So with mortgage rates, if we start to see a few more rate cuts, that's obviously going to open up a little bit more affordability for buyers. And typically speaking, the rate cuts very much impact the market and, people feeling confident to step into the market and actually have the ability to buy a house.
Which is huge. Okay, so let's talk about tariffs and the potential on buyers and sellers. What's your take?
So the tariffs are, they're obviously a huge topic of conversation right now. And I think there's so many ways that tariffs could impact the housing market. But I think one in particular that's really interesting to look at, and I think back to COVID when we practically woke up and lumber had quadrupled overnight, is all of the, elements that go into the pre-construction market, the building market, and the renovation market. Because lumber and steel and all the goods,
potentially have a big impact.
Yes.
There's a lot of potential here. We don't have the knowns yet, but we'll find out soon. So for people wanting to buy or people wanting to sell this spring, what do they need to keep in mind? Definitely.
So, I think as we spoke on, affordability is everything. So if you're looking to buy, you want to be really mindful of what is your budget, what can you afford, what are you comfortable with, and really approach it with an understanding of interest rates, with an understanding of your pre-approval and effectively affordability, because those are going to be probably the most important, and then stick to that budget, don't deviate.
Yeah, which can be very tempting when you're emotionally responsive to certain situations.
Absolutely.
Okay, on the flip side, the selling, what would you have for them?
So sellers, I think the most important is be realistic and understand the market. Pricing and pricing on point is really important. It can be really easy to get lost in the noise. And as we've talked about with all the different prices across the country, you've got to really understand where the price point stands and where you are in your market. And then you've got to be realistic on days on market. The market's different, it's shifting. So the market that we knew where things were selling in a second is not the market that we're in today.
Right, and first impressions matter, don't they? In terms of
Massively.
preparing your home.
Yes.
And staging as well?
Yeah, and even more so, I would say, in a tricky market, which we're in, the presentation of your property, the staging, all of that is so critical. So you don't want to miss the boat.
And don't get a second chance to make a first impression, right?
Meanwhile, the once red-hot condo market is seemingly cooling off.
Toronto realtor and real estate blog author David Fleming came on the show to tell us why.
We're talking about this because you and I had a conversation the last time you were here.
Yes.
You said you haven't seen anything like this in years. So what are you seeing?
Yeah, and we were kind of chatting about the overall market. Hey, freeholds are moving, houses are moving, condos are not. And so what we're seeing out there right now is that condo sales are down, condo listings are up. And what that means, the net effect, is that the absorption rate is a lot lower. So it's a lowest absorption rate I've ever seen, which means approximately 1 out of every 4 listings results in a sale. And that is something I have not seen in my whole career.
1 out of every 4 results in a sale.
Statistically.
What's happening to the other 3?
Well, I see a lot of people that are trying to pretend it's 2022. They're listing low with an offer date. I wrote on my blog that the success rate for that is down to about 10%. It was about 60% when the market was ripping in 2021, 2022. That was a lot of research, but I was very curious to know about that. So people that are listing low with an offer date for condos, you're in the wrong year.
So what's the best advice? Do they hang on? Do they try to dump it and move on?
Well, it's not so much about dumping it. It's sort of being realistic about pricing. So, I mean, I have a condo listing. Let's say it's at $599. The identical unit, 1 floor up, exactly the same, is at $699. Not $610, not $620. That's a seller that either has absolutely no idea or just doesn't care. They're just saying, I'll leave it, and if it sells, it sells. Maybe it's tenanted, maybe they're in no rush, but that's not a recipe for success.
Let's go back in time a little bit. And does this have to do with pre-construction sales and people thinking, I'm buying this as an investment, this is going to continue?
Some of them, yeah, and we talked about this off camera, and that's a whole other issue with the pre-construction. There's a lawsuit with developers that are suing buyers that can't close. And I think between a media cycle, between a flood of inventory, and then between a lot of people that can't close, there's a lot of fear out there. And so it's ironic because in 2021, 2022, the fear was FOMO. It was buyers saying, prices are running up, I can't wait, I need to get in. The similar fear now, or the exact opposite, is I think prices are going to be going down. It's the same fear, and it's the same group of people, which is first-time condo buyers. They're afraid if I jump in now and I get a wicked deal based off of the peak price, prices will go down lower. So I think those folks are on the sidelines, and that group is enough to move the needle.
Prices are lower and interest rates are higher.
Yeah, and interest rates are coming down, which ironically you would have thought would have motivated some of these folks who've been sitting on the sidelines to get out there and buy. So, I mean, I think it is a great time to buy a condo, but you've got to be willing to say, if it goes down a little bit more in the next 6, 12 months, I'm buying this for 5 to 6 years. I just see so much fear among that demographic. They're sitting on the sidelines.
There's a couple of stories we could touch on here, but I want to talk about the Toronto Star report, and you had this on your blog as well.
Yeah.
The number of lawsuits against condo buyers. This is from developers. What's happening here?
Wow, long story, but essentially the House of Cards, as it will, has folded. I have never sold a pre-construction condo in 21 years. The pricing never made sense. People pay more to maybe get something if it's not canceled or redesigned or relaunched 5 years from now. And eventually when the prices go down, these people are so far behind, they can't afford to close on their purchase. So the developers are not just saying, okay, I'll keep your deposit. They're going ahead and suing the buyers and squeezing blood from a stone. I don't know if they're actually going to get any money, but this will be a very, very interesting test.
And they are within their legal rights to do this.
Absolutely, they are. I mean, pre-construction, it's gambling. It's always been gambling. You don't walk into a casino, put all your money in the roulette wheel, lose, and then turn to the pit boss and say, I've changed my mind. So all these pre-construction buyers right now are saying, hey, wait a minute, this isn't fair. But it ceased to be about real estate a long time ago. It was an investment, it was a gamble, and now you're seeing the unfortunate reality.
You know, real estate is a market, and markets we know go through cycles. So do you foresee the condo market rebounding?
Eventually, all markets rebound, and I'm not just saying that. I know that sounds silly to some folks, but every dip over the last 25 years has been followed up by another boom or another gradual climb. Every peak that we've seen previously has been surpassed. So I think this one's going to take a little bit longer for the condo market in general, at least 6 to 12 months. But then because of the lack of units that are being built, I think 4 to 5 years from now, we're going to have a massive deficit in condos.
The Assembly of First Nations found that First Nations voters could help decide the outcome in 36 ridings. 19 of those have a First Nations electorate of 10% or more. So with that type of voting power, there are growing conversations about the lack of focus on Indigenous issues in the campaign thus far. Indigenous Watchdog tracks the progress on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's 94 calls to action. That, as a reminder, was released back in 2015. A decade later, 14 of those calls are completed, work on 22 haven't started, and 19 calls are stalled. 46 are reported to be still in progress. So for a closer look this morning at the issues and specifics yet to be addressed by the federal leaders, we're joined by Sheila North, former MKO Grand Chief, and Cassidy Caron, Principal Consultant at First Peoples Group and former Métis National Council President. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Well, Trump and tariffs have been dominant in this campaign, but we know that across the board, affordability is still a top concern in every riding in this country. Statistics Canada released a survey of Indigenous people in January, and 45% of First Nations, 44% of Métis, and 54% of Inuit living off reserve said it was difficult or very difficult to pay for necessary expenses this past year. We're talking housing and food. Sheila, how are First Nations experiencing the rising cost of living?
Well, as you just stated some statistics there, we're used to this kind of level of living here in our own country. So we're starting to see other people feel it and complain about it, but we've been living like this for a long time, many of our people, and it's getting worse.
The intensity of the affordability crisis is ratcheting up. Cassidy, what about affordability concerns facing the Métis?
Absolutely. So, throughout this election, we're listening and we're hearing a lot, mostly specifically about the tariff war and talking about resource development, resource extraction. What we're not hearing about is closing those socioeconomic gaps that still exist between the Métis Nation and all Canadians. And so that's a critical issue that we're still listening for throughout this election that we just have yet to hear.
Sheila, you bumped into Liberal leader Mark Carney last week, and you tracked him down. You said you talked to him, about how treaties and tariffs are, what you said, interrelated. What does that connection look like for people who may not know?
Well, I think we all know that, if we don't all know by now, treaties are very much inherent to the building of this nation. Without our treaties, Canada wouldn't be what it is, and it's what's holding it together at the end of the day. And so if they're going to start imposing tariffs back and forth, First Nations treaty and inherent rights need to be there as well represented, because they already are. When they talk about natural resources and extraction, they're inherently talking about our rights. And so we're going to have to get to the point where we deal with the inherent in treaty rights at some point when you talk about tariffs and this economic crisis. So we might as well get on the same table now, because it's going to happen. It's inevitable.
Party leaders we know are highlighting their plans to beef up Canada's defence and resource development, as you just mentioned, Sheila. These are pledges that directly affect Indigenous communities. And Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre just outlined them both. He's promising a national energy corridor that would include pre-approved pipelines. Liberal leader Mark Carney says he's going to increase Canada's military presence in the Arctic, promising billions to do that. Cassidy, what commitments are you looking for to ensure Indigenous people are part of those decisions?
So when we hear those large campaign promises, what's missing right now is language around commitment to working with rights holders, and specifically distinctions-based language. So, when we're talking in the North, we want to be hearing the language around working directly with Inuit leaders. We want to be hearing the language around working with First Nations leaders, and we want to hear the language around working with Métis leaders. And so when we're talking about resource extraction, there needs to be that commitment to working with rights holders. When the next government is formed, Indigenous leaders across this country want to know that the leader of this country understands the difference between working directly with rights holders, Indigenous rights holders, versus us as stakeholders or an interest group or just those with the loudest voice. It's critical that the next leader of this country understands that Indigenous peoples in this country have rights, and they need to be at the table at that level.
The party leaders, as we mentioned, have just 3 more weeks to earn the votes from Indigenous communities. New analysis from the census data from the Assembly of First Nations. We said this off the top. Whoever ends up winning in this election in 36 ridings could be decided by First Nations voters. So, Sheila, I'll start with you. Which party are you most confident in to advance the issues we talked about today? There has been concern and precedent in the past of concern from both of these parties, the Conservative and the Liberals, and how they've related to Indigenous communities.
Well, as a fellow journalist, I try to maintain that neutrality, and I try very, very desperately to do that. But I also have to think about the good of our people, and you know, I hope that all 3 parties make large and bold commitments to work with Indigenous people, because that's what we're all looking for. I think we're still missing that. We're still getting to that point, and it's also upon us as Indigenous people and leaders to make noise and to be heard. It's not the same as it was when it was in 2015, when you saw a huge rallying of the Indigenous vote, Indigenous voices. But that was also at the same time when the Conservatives were making, you know, threatening, I guess, our rights and inherent rights to our lands and the way that we govern. And so there was a pushback against that, and Liberals spoke to the Indigenous people at that time, and great numbers turned out. It doesn't feel the same right now because of the what's going on and south of the border and its influence on this election. But I think it's going to pick up because we're seeing more and more people engaged, and we're definitely smarter at you know, finding out who is actually saying what.
Yeah, Cassie, how about yourself?
Yeah, again, you know, I take a nonpartisan approach right now. Again, just as Sheila said, we're not hearing really anything as it relates to Indigenous issues in this country, good or bad right now. So it's hard to form those alliances and make those decisions just based specifically on that. But there are 3 weeks left in this election. And as you said, Anne-Marie, you know, the First Nations create one of the largest voter populations. But when you take into consideration the numbers of Métis voters as well, who have historically been extremely civically engaged, and Inuit, either collectively or individually, you know, our populations can swing ridings. So it's really important that the leaders understand what is most important to us when they're continuing their campaign across this country, to go out and meet with Indigenous leaders to understand what those issues are. We saw Prime Minister Carney, right before the elections dropped, or the writs dropped for the election, meet with the 3 national Indigenous leaders. That's promising, but we've yet to see any of that engagement from any of the leaders of the parties throughout this election. There's still 3 weeks left, so we're hoping that they hear this message, and we'll start engaging with Indigenous peoples and understand, you know, tariff war is important. Closing socioeconomic gaps, equally important for our people. How are they going to do that? We want to see that language reflected in their election campaigns.
As you both wisely point out, party actions of the past, we have 2 new leaders of these parties, so it is an open conversation. Sheila and Cassidy, I want to just end on reconciliation, which is the top of the list for the AFN's suggested list of topics that are important to Indigenous peoples. What should the next government, whoever it is, take to move towards reconciliation? What language does that look like and sound like to you? I'll start with you, Sheila.
I think the old adage of nothing about us without us is a good summary of what needs to happen, because we should be at the table when decisions are being made about our people. I think we're getting closer to that, but it usually happens after, you know, a court case it comes with it, because government sometimes only listens to outcomes of court cases, but we shouldn't have to get to that point. Treaties were meant to have shared access to resources and lands and shared responsibility and a relationship. And we need to remind ourselves what those are, because it's not, you know, being better or having somebody have more than the other. It's equal rights to the lands and resources that Creator has blessed us with on these lands. So I think the more that we remind ourselves of what those actually mean, the less scared we will be of what treaties actually mean.
And Cassidy, for you?
I wholeheartedly agree with Sheila. You know, reconciliation is the co-development of what this country looks like moving forward versus having to take our issues to court to be taken seriously. So again, in like concrete action. What that looks like is a strong understanding that Indigenous peoples in this country are rights holders. We are not stakeholders. We are not an advocacy group. We are not interest holders. We are rights holders. And we need to be at the table to be able to co-develop what is needed to be able to move this country forward in a good way.
You're listening to Your Morning, the podcast, where we bring you some of the best conversations from our show every week. Join us live on CTV every weekday, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern, 7 to 10 a.m. Atlantic, on CTV, CTV News Channel, or on your CTV News app.
Declutter your life, declutter your mind, like laundry, dishes, and chores. Those unread emails in your inbox, they keep piling up. Does it seem daunting to even try to sort through it all?
You know I have a lot. The fear of checking the inbox can sometimes mean a forgotten reply or just running out of space. Whether it's for work or for personal things, it can get very messy.
So Lindsey sat down with organizing expert Megan Arthurs. We had some great tips on how to keep your inbox clutter-free.
A major source of clutter is all of that promotional stuff that I get in my email, like all of the businesses that maybe you bought one thing from and now you're on the list. How do you get rid of the unwanted emails?
Yes, unwanted and unnecessary, we have to unsubscribe. And it takes a little bit of time, but is so worth the time. I just did this personally. I did a big purge, and I now am saving so much time. So if you see an email in your inbox and you're thinking, you know what, I don't really want to receive this email anymore, open up the email.
Okay.
You want to scroll down to the very bottom of that email. There's going to be very fine print. You might need your
Very
specs.
tiny, yes.
Very tiny. They want it to be tiny. You want to find the button unsubscribe. It's going to pull up a new window, and then you either hit submit, unsubscribe. They might ask you a question. Are you sure you don't want to receive
And
these
does it matter
anymore?
what you hit here? It's still...
This is the thing. Sometimes you unsubscribe, but then you still receive emails from that company and you're thinking this is awfully suspicious. So you may need to actually go into that company's website and find manage preferences and unsubscribe from there. You just have to be careful.
Okay, but that's a good tip. So now once we delete and unsubscribe, what is the best way to organize the important emails in our inbox?
So you want to create a file system. So like you have in your home, potentially you file important documents away. Within your inbox, you can create file folders, you can color coordinate them, you can create labels on them. Depending on the platform you're using, we're looking at a Gmail platform right now, you can create new files. So let's say this is a personal email. We can create files like medical or school or kids. And that way you can put those emails that you've already taken action on within the inbox. And now your inbox is really for your important emails, the new emails coming in. It's just nice to store them away and it's still easy to find them.
Oh, I love this so much. This is like my goals right here. Okay, so you also use a method called the 2-minute rule. What is the 2-minute rule?
So the 2-minute rule I use on the online space, but I also use it in my physical space as well. If a task takes 2 minutes or under, do it now. So if it takes under 2 minutes to respond, to delete, to put that email in a folder, maybe unsubscribe, take the time and do it now, because what happens is we don't, it piles up, it becomes so overwhelming, and then we create resistance against it. And it's like, oh, this is such a chore now. I don't want to do any of it all.
I think I've told you what I do, which is don't do this at home. This is a PSA, is that I will take the 2 minutes to put a note in my calendar to say, Lindsey, respond to this. I'll do that instead of just responding.
You got to flip it around.
I know, isn't that so silly? Okay, you know when you come back from vacation?
Yes.
And then you come back to like hundreds of emails in your inbox. Is there a way we can avoid that situation?
Yes, so most email platforms have this compatibility where you can pre-auto filter and auto delete emails. So let's say you're getting all those store emails, even emails that you're CC'd on that you don't really have to take action, you're just receiving them. You can go into your settings and get those to be pre-deleted or filtered into folders. That way you don't have to worry about them when you come back.
That's so great. And then templates. I want to ask you about that. How can they be helpful when you're replying to people?
So a lot of the time we send out a frequent reply, right? Client inquiry or an appointment confirmation, and we're thinking, I just typed this out like a week ago. So you can create a template in your settings where you just type it out once, and then when you want to send that email, you just click the template instead of retyping the whole email out.
Oh my gosh. And then also you say subject line can help you too when you're responding to emails.
Yes, sometimes I find, there's a lot of correspondence between you and someone else, and you want to find a specific piece of information.
Yeah.
And you're like, I see all the emails, but where is this piece of information? So if you're more specific in the subject line, like put the date. Don't just put meeting. Put meeting recap, April 7th, 2025. That way you can type that into the search line, and then it will come up right away.
Megan Arthurs, all of these tips are so great. You just got to find the time to do all of the things, right?
Yes.
Yeah, schedule that.
Oh, these are all really good tips. I know that you are horrified, Kelsey, because I have like tens of thousands of unread emails in my inbox, which I have not deleted.
Which, why do you not just select all and delete? Why not?
I don't know. That's an excellent question.
Just do it, Anne-Marie. It is freeing and liberating. I saw this segment and I thought, I don't know that I need these tips. And then I listened to them and I thought, these are all really, really good tips, really helpful. But one of the best tips I ever got was years and years and years ago to help avoid some of this kind of buildup was to have almost like a burner email address that's what you give to stores, that's what you give to websites, where it can be just something absurd you would never tell anybody because it's embarrassing or just a random string of characters.
Like Cutie Kelsey 123?
1,000%. And then that's what you subscribe with for everything. So then your regular email address doesn't have any of that. So I have like 2 emails at any given time in my inbox because it's only like the school that maybe is emailing me or another parent, and that's it. That's all I got to go through.
I can't imagine. I have all the news alerts come through, plus all of they're all work-related emails, but there's not things that I necessarily need to read, but they're part of a larger group.
So what are you going to do?
Well, this is my plan, is that I have teenagers that have big social lives and small bank accounts. So I'm just going to pay one of them to go through and unsubscribe to all the things that I've ordered online, like those ones.
Yes.
And then just do some bulk erasing for me.
You can do this. I really believe in you. There's something liberating. And maybe you won't feel the feeling if one of your kids is doing it, but there's something just so satisfying about saying, no, I do not wish to receive your email. Thank you very much.
I would never say that.
No, well, that's what it says on the website.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Do you know what I do sometimes, though?
What?
You'll laugh at this. When I'm at a checkout and they, right away, you're buying something, a shirt or whatever, and they say email address, I say, no, thanks. The look on their face.
I say that all the time. I say, I don't give out my email. And then they stop. And then if they insist, I say, why don't we use the store's email?
I like that line.
Yeah.
Back pocket, put that one in.
So many good tips on your morning. A new series hopes to reel you in with a fresh perspective on fishing.
This is so great. It's a 6-part docu-series called Get Hooked. It shows us a whole different side of the fishing world and talks about how this love of the outdoors can really foster community and connection.
Yeah, each episode features a different angling guide with a unique backstory and relationship to fishing and the outdoors. So here now is our conversation with one of those anglers, Demisha Dennis, and series co-creator Heidi Lynch.
So Heidi, first up for you, you co-created and produced this series. How did you discover this whole community in fishing?
Yeah, I started attending fishing with my queer partner, and we realized we were kind of the only people at the pond from our specific group that were there. And then I started hunting down some underrepresented anglers in Ontario and found the group of people that we got to film with on Get Hooked.
I love this.
Yeah.
Demisha, you share how you started fishing, and I want to share that clip with our audience here. Take a look.
I didn't want to go to church.
Yeah?
And I was just like, it's religion or fish, and I chose fish. Got into it more out of challenging the narrative of who belongs in fly fishing.
Yeah.
And just seeing different people show up, and it was always an older white dude sport.
Still is, pretty much.
Okay, Demisha, you started laughing when that clip played. What's going through your head right now?
It's just the reality of what it is that fishing is an old white dude sport, and here I am, a Black queer woman immigrant, just taking over that sport in my own way and showing community that you belong in the space through storytelling, through relationship building, and saying to folks that you really do belong on the river. However that story looks for you, just get out there and try it. It doesn't have to be an old white dude sport that requires all the equipment. You can really just get out there and try the sport.
I feel like the whole sport needs a marketing rebrand at this point.
Yeah.
You're like,
definitely.
Yes, let's do it.
like you said, there's this particular image associated with fishing, but it is for everyone. So, Demisha, for viewers who watch the show and they feel inspired to try it for the first time, maybe you're sitting at home thinking, I could get into that. What's your advice for them?
Yeah, get out and try it. And don't think too hard about it. The images that you see on TV of fishing, of fly fishing, they're not the only thing that's out there. You can go to a thrift store to get old rods, or you can go to rent gear, borrow gear. You don't have to spend all your money on getting the expensive things to get outside and try it, because I think that's what scares a lot of people. So I'll show up to the river in jeans and a t-shirt just to say to someone, you don't need waders or expensive boots or all the equipment to go out there and do it. It really is an approachable sport. Probably one of the least expensive things that you can do in the outdoors if you just try it.
I love that. Heidi, you worked with a variety of different anglers in this series right across Ontario.
Yeah.
Was there a moment that stood out to you during filming that you could share with us?
Yeah, I got to produce from a kayak. We did a kayak fishing episode at Petrie Island with Frank Laney, and that was just unreal. It was a beautiful place to be in nature for me too, and there are so many amazing destinations in Ontario to visit, especially this summer. Ontario is an amazing place, and so is Canada, so we just need to celebrate ourselves in this moment, I think.
The excitement that you have speaking about this, I don't know that people at home realize that you're not a fisher person, even despite wearing the hat that your brother gave you that indicates you love fishing. You are so pumped about it, and so I think that shows that you can be brand new to the sport and you can give it a go.
Yeah, definitely. And just the benefits of nature in general. Get outside, step away from the stress of what's going on, and enjoy nature a little bit.
I love that. Demisha, real quick, do you have a favorite spot in Ontario?
Algonquin Park, without a doubt. Algonquin Park for everything, brook trout to bass to pike. You get there, you do it, and you get to be on land that is protected, that is of an Indigenous community that still lives there and very strong in that area. So I wouldn't trade that space for anything for fishing.
I love it. I love the promoting of Canada and Ontario. You two, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The series is called Get Hooked. You can catch new episodes every week. This is the Canadian collaboration we have all been waiting for. Multi-platinum pop icon Sean Desmond and powerhouse vocalist Jamie Fine have teamed up on a brand new song called Body. Take a listen.
I wanna touch that body. I wanna kiss that body. I wanna hold that, never let go of nothing without your body. I wanna touch that.
Oh my gosh, the single is now the most added song across Canadian radio and in the top 40 radio in its first week. Sean and Jamie are here in studio. You guys, it is great to have you. What you guys couldn't see at home was that the volume in studio didn't go up right away, and you guys knew exactly where you were in the song anyway.
Still
just
jamming.
started dancing.
Yeah.
Jamming out.
If you want us to put on a performance, just ask. Okay?
Just ask.
Just ask. Hand you a microphone. Also, what you guys didn't see was before we even started, you guys just got very comfortable.
Yeah, I told Jamie,
was
just
thinking
come
this is
on,
kind
just
of the
do
vibe,
it. This
you
is
know?
the vibe for today on the morning show. Yeah, on
I
your
like
morning.
it. Yeah, I like it. Stay like that. Pull
I
it
will
a bit.
remain here for the entire interview.
Oh my gosh.
We have an amazing team of people that kind of guide us and come up with the ideas and stuff, because social media is a lot of work. We talk about it all the time. We're like, oh my God, social media, Instagram, TikTok. So what's great is that we have people that hey, we're gonna shoot this and I have this idea to do that. And then we go into the grocery store and incognito, we're like, okay, we gotta find the aisle, nobody's in. Okay, nobody's in here, go quick.
I don't know why we picked the frozen section. We were like, nobody's ever in the frozen section. Cool math, guys. Yeah, it was hilarious.
Yes.
Okay, so did someone ever come down the aisle?
Yes,
the
so
whole
many.
time. Yeah.
What'd you do?
Nothing, we just kept going.
I'm actually really good at that. I was just like, sorry, Susan. I know. You can get your pizza after.
Yeah, here are your pizza pockets.
Exactly. Wait, what do you need? What do you need to get this
Exactly.
flavor? Yeah.
Personal
start over.
shoppers. There you go.
So how'd you guys hook up for a collaboration?
So I met Jamie last year when I was on tour in Ottawa. She came to my show. And I just felt like, when you just meet somebody and you know they're good people and you get a good vibe, I got that. And I was writing in Toronto a couple of months ago. And I was like, hey, Jamie, why don't you come to Toronto? She was in Niagara Falls, actually. And I'm like, let's do some writing together. Let's just see what happens, right? Because I was writing a bunch of stuff for myself. And we got together 2 days. One day we wrote a song. It was kind of like, meh, whatever. The next day we wrote Body. And I was like, wow, this is really something special. So I recorded the whole song myself. And that night I went home, I'm listening to it, and I remember hearing Jamie in my head, singing it as we were writing it. And I'm like, man, she needs to be on this song with me. Oh. I called her immediately, and I was like, hey, do you want to be on Body with me? And
it was easy. Easy decision.
Okay, so then take me from that point on, Jamie. What goes through your head? You get that phone call.
I was sitting with my partner on the couch, and it was a text, and I got the text, and I was like, yeah. I mean, yeah, I have time. And honestly, so we had kind of our year planned out, and there were other, we were talking about what we were gonna do and how the year was gonna look, and then this kind of fell on our lap, and we had so much fun writing it. It was one of those things that I was like, I would never pass this up on any day. So we pushed everything back for us, and this is like the most fun I think I've had releasing a song in a long time.
That's awesome. It's such a great reminder to be open to opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you make a plan, you can kind of get stuck in the plan sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, no,
Be malleable.
Be
malleable,
you have to be open to it.
Yeah.
You guys have so much going on this year. Sean, you're about to embark on a gigantic tour, 20 cities.
I am. I haven't announced it yet, but we're announcing probably in a couple of weeks, so really excited about that. You might see Jamie with me on some dates.
We're trying to make it happen.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
That is awesome.
I'm learning the choreo as we speak.
The lip flick.
Yeah.
You see it in the video too. She does it in the video.
I know.
I'm
annoying.
That. It's so good.
I'm annoying.
No, I love it. But listen, you got a lot to coordinate on your end too, because you have a bunch of Canadian stops. You've already been across the eastern half of Canada. You're into Western Canada in the fall. Then you're going to South Africa.
10 days, we go to South Africa.
So what goes into planning a tour like that?
Oh, medication. Honestly, it's really just kind of prepping mentally and prepping my body is a big one now, taking that more seriously and just knowing how much work goes into touring and how hard it is on your mental health and physical health. I have a really great team of people around me that we all kind of just get together and talk about what the plan is. I feel really ready. This is the first tour in a long time I feel very ready for weeks in advance, so. Let's hope for the best.
It's very exciting. Yeah. Sean, for yourself, I've read that you have taken a lot of time with your family and tried to balance not only career, but making time for your kids and their schedules. So how do you do that when you're planning a big tour like this?
Honestly, everything is in a calendar. My wife has a calendar at home and we know what's going on, what day, what time. And, I have an amazing support system at home. My parents, Chantel's parents, my wife is incredible. So we just make it work. As long as I know ahead of time what's going on and there's enough time, we always make it work.
We are so glad you joined us today.
If you want to hear more of these great conversations, don't forget to download or hit subscribe to Your Morning the Podcast on iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
And of course, you can watch us live weekdays on the TV. We're on CTV, CTV News Channel, or on your CTV News app. Start your morning with us.